Um, it just seems beyond just the pivot. If I were in your shoes, having fought for most of my adult life, perhaps even before then, for the rights of African Americans, how do we justify this seeming retreat back almost 50 years in what we're seeing in this current candidacy?
Mm. In many ways, I think it's a long time coming because the Republicans set themselves up for this, because they have conditioned their base to react this way to multiculturalism, to changing demographics. In the end, I'm an optimist because I look at this as the last stand of the racists. I mean, in this country now, currently, the babies that are being born are majority non-white. So the change is coming, and I think, frankly, this demographic, the Trump supporters, eventually are going to die out. They know that they're losing. They can't win. We have marriage equality. You have a majority of young people who support Black Lives Matter. All of these changes, even the South is changing. So I think that it's just a matter of time before this mindset is somewhat subdued. I think that at the same time, if we're not careful, this trend could mean a lot of damage in the short term for us.
You know, David, you talked about change coming, and one of the biggest changes in the United States. I mean, you mentioned it in terms of the number of babies being born that are multi ethnic and not necessarily white, but we are seeing a situation in which the number of non-white people will indeed pass. By non-white, I include African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, etc. Will surpass the number of white European type voters that have been around for forever. There was a report out at the beginning of the campaign that said basically, if you didn't do something now to appeal to Hispanic voters, you were already starting out, for example, 2% behind where you were in 2012, and much was the same case for African Americans if you were on the Republican side. Address the fact that this is going to set them back, thankfully, probably a decade or more.
Oh, yes, it will set them back at least a decade or more, probably generations, hopefully, because there are so many things involved here. I mean, you look at the Supreme Court. Now, if we have a Democratic president, that president, presumably Hillary Clinton, will have the ability to put even more liberals or moderates on the court. You know, with Scalia leaving, already the balance of power has changed. So right there, you have a situation where the conservatives no longer have ownership of the Supreme Court. That's a big deal.
The people in the legislature are also doing incredibly stupid things in terms of not allowing Justice Garland to have a vote. What's going to make them stop doing that once Hillary Clinton is president? I mean, we could end up with a Supreme Court with 3 members on it by the time she's finished.
Mm-hmm. That is a very good point, which is why it is important, I believe, to have one party running the Senate, the House, although I don't think the House will happen in the short term, but definitely the Senate. The Republicans have shown that they are not making a good faith effort at being team players. You know, with them, it's just obstruction, like the segregationists of the old days. And they don't like government. They don't want to be involved in government. They don't want government to work.
Even want to see the lame duck session after the election because they're afraid of what could happen. I mean, it's like, come on, guys. I mean, you haven't done any work for 2 years, and now you're going to take away the last 2 months for you to do something meaningful and throw those out the window as well?
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, at this point, there is no reason for them to be there. And at the rate things are going, they will no longer be a viable national party. They'll still have control on the local level because of gerrymandering and voter suppression tactics, at least for now. But, looking long term, their days are numbered.
David, I couldn't agree with you more. I got to ask the question about voter turnout in the African American community. What, if anything, can be done to increase it so it gets to a level where you're finally able to take your political power and absolutely use it, particularly against a despot like Trump?
Well, I would like to believe that people know what's at stake. It's important for those who want the black vote to articulate what the black vote will get in return. If there's no excitement, it's a hard sell. Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama. And I think people know what's at stake. But at the same time, I also think that there's a risk of there being sort of a lull, sort of falling asleep on election day. People have been through this time and time again, and they don't feel empowered. They don't feel as if they have a stake in the process. So you have to be serious, and you have to promise people things and then deliver on it, because we've been through this story time and time again, and we know how politicians triangulate. And I think the Democrats or whatever other party need to make their best case to black voters and any other voters for that matter.
Absolutely. David, thank you for taking time from your schedule. I know you're a very busy man. David A. Love writes for The Grio, NBC's The Grio, CNN.com, Atlanta Black Star, and many other publications. Pleasure having you here on the show again. Good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, great seeing you, and thanks for having me. It's been great.
So that was my interview with David A. Love, and more coming up on the U.S. political scene when we get to the C block. With
he's an interesting guy, isn't he?
Very interesting, and just a very soft-spoken, very gentle human being. And but every time he opens his mouth, he's kind of like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. When David A. Love talks, people listen because he's that good.